I know what you did last summer, non-spoiler review. I really liked this movie. I thought it hit on all the things I wanted to hit on. I just really enjoyed my time with these characters and with the setting and everything. And I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I'm always skeptical. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, like I'm really skeptical of these type of movies because they're trying to get our attention of like, hey, we're revisiting something that you really liked or really loved or grew up with, and we're kind of making it for a new generation or whatever. And this one came across really like it wasn't. It really kind of took itself seriously, but not to the point where it like was over serious. You know, it like really kind of took itself like they were trying to make a good movie. I felt like everybody was invested in making a good movie. I felt like the writers and directors and the stars like had a lot of love for the first movie. That's what I kept getting from it was that, oh, these are like fans of the original movie. Like this is something that they want to do justice for, you know? And so my overall view of it, or my overall thoughts of it is very positive. I mean, we'll get into it later in the episode of like, you know, more specific stuff. But overall, I mean, I was very happy with it. I think it's a great, like kind of, you know, date night movie, kind of opening weekend, see it with a crowd. We saw a matinee screening because we wanted to, you know, get the review out. But I think it'll play even better, like with a more full crowd, like at night or something like that. And I just really like the summer vibes, the music, the feel of it. It's very glossy. Like the movie just looks overly glossy, almost like a reality television. So at times with like how they shoot certain things, but I enjoyed that. You know, I think it like really fit the whole summer. You know, these are really like attractive people, kind of like that original in 97. I mean, it really was like a group of characters that you really got invested in. I think they did a good job with that too. So
yeah, so let's touch on the characters a bit because I think when we first left the theater, that was kind of the first thing that we both said is we really like, you know, all the characters in this. Now, there's one character that we didn't really care for, but I don't think it's the actor's fault. I think it's just they didn't give him a lot to do. But all the characters.
I mean, if you're gonna man, who was it?
So the Milo character to me just didn't make sense. I mean, it just didn't. They didn't give him anything to do. They tried to force this kind of like little relationship thing, and from the very beginning, you could just kind of tell that wasn't going to kind of hold up.
Yeah, and if you're somebody who's never seen this movie or you've never seen the original, long story short, you know, kind of follows the same type of opening too, with like, you know, these lifelong friends, they get into a, you know, we'll just call it a car accident because they do deviate from the original with this. And then somebody's getting revenge. I mean, that's the basic thing. And the Milo character is kind of the on and off again love interest of like one of our main leads. Yeah. And yeah, so I agree. I thought that he was going to hit his stride, you know, later in the movie. But he was almost like that extra character that I felt like if he wasn't even in the movie, I think you wouldn't have really noticed it a whole lot.
I felt like it was almost, they were like, hey, we need another guy for this other female character to kind of like even it out, you know, because they had 3 female characters and then 2 male
this
characters.
One has 5. So that's another way they deviate is like the main group's 5 characters as opposed to the 4 from but yeah, I'm with you. The characters, I think that was the big highlight of the movie. Like, I really do. I think when you really look at this movie, it really does play out like a 90s slasher. You know, if you grew up with 90s slashers, it takes its time a little bit. It gets you invested into the characters. And I really like that for this type of movie. You're not going to see this type of movie to be really scared. You're trying to get a few jump scares and some maybe a couple of inventive kills maybe. But the core relationships and the performances, like I said earlier, everybody was like bought in and wanted to make the best movie possible. That's what I felt on screen. Like I'm like, these are really good actors. Like, and I thought that this was like a showcase for everybody in the cast. So I could see all these cast members doing something.
Yeah. It wasn't one of those things where one person, you were just like, God, man, you know,
and it felt like Scream in that, you know, the new Scream with, you know, they casted that great too. And so they're nailing that part of these movies, you know, and we'll get to the legacy characters here in a little bit, but the core cast, I guess you could say the reboot cast, again, it started off like it was going to be something that might have annoyed us because some of the dialogue and just some of the way the characters are acting, you're like, oh, this is going to be that one note type of character. And it really did a great job of fleshing out certain characters and making them like full and very vital to like not only the plot, but just have a nice arc throughout the movie. These characters weren't one note, in my opinion.
Yeah, and another thing that I really liked that was different than the original is this movie had a lot more humor in it.
Yes.
And I always like horror movies that have some humor, you know, some breaking up of the slaying, you know.
Yeah.
Carnage.
That's a great point. I noticed that too, because if you rewatch the 97 one,
there's hardly any.
It takes itself a little too seriously at times. And I like the movie. I really do. Nostalgia with it. I love it. But like, I think it's a good movie. But that's something that this one definitely has is that nice break in the formula, you could say,
Yeah, and I never felt like they were like any of the jokes were cheap jokes. I felt like they were kind of like natural reactions to things that you would probably have if these things, were happening to you or if you were in the situation. So to me, I really like the humor part of it. I thought they did a great job with that. And then the cameos, you said the legacy characters. I really like how they introduced the characters. They weren't just in one scene. They were, it kept going back to them throughout the movie. And I just love the way that they did that. They could have a lot of movies when they reboot or they try to revitalize these franchises, they just put them in for a second, or they kind of make it messy with how they're introducing these characters.
Yeah,
and we'll get into a little bit of that because I know that that's a con coming up in a bit.
Yeah, and stick around if when you watch it. Stick around for a spoiler review. You can either watch in this episode. I'm actually going to upload a separate segment of a spoiler review as well. So definitely check that out. We'll get into full spoilers with that. But yeah, overall, I think if you're going to this and you were a fan of the original, for the most part, and that's all I'll say. For the most part, I think they handled the legacy characters really well. I really liked kind of what they did with that. Again, I'll say with a big parentheses, for the most part.
Yeah. And then another thing I really liked is you didn't have any, the second I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. There was a big thing where the guy who ends up being the killer, he like his last name in the movie is Benson.
Ben's son.
And then he's like Ben's son.
Yeah,
and
dude.
There was nothing like that. And that, I was like, I just love that because a lot of times, like you said, the first movie took itself too seriously, and then the second movie didn't take itself seriously enough. Yeah. I feel like this was right in the middle of where
it is. That's a good way to put it. It's tonally, it's in the middle of the two. And I think that there's a lot of callbacks. There's a great line in here where like they're talking to Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character, right. And he makes a comment about like, somebody's like, well, why don't we just get on our boat and leave? And he goes, I wouldn't do, it's kind of a callback to that's what he did in the first movie. I loved little things like that, but it didn't get overloaded with the nostalgia. Hey, look, man, remember this from this movie? Remember this? Yeah. They do integrate just like every single movie we're seeing, whether it be Alien Romulus, whether it be the Scream movies. Of course, you're going to have the most iconic line said again, but this felt like a fun wink, wink to the audience and not this huge billboard of like, hey, the only reason that this movie's any enjoyable to you is because of the callbacks. It's like, was like an extra little spice that they threw into the mix. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and I just, and I wrote down the deaths. I thought the deaths were handled cleverly. They weren't like kind of a joke. Because again, that's the thing that me and you really like about certain movies, like the Hatchet series. Is they just have these like crazy out of the world.
Yeah, you gotta go one or the other for at least with our taste. It's like we either want to see a Hatchet movie that doesn't take itself seriously, that's going so over the top, or we want a slasher movie to be tense and suspenseful and have good characters, kind of like, this movie and, like an urban legend, like something that like it isn't playing just for the gasps, so to speak,
But I thought they had good kills. It wasn't anything where it was, like super crazy. He's not doing the Jason X where he freezes their head and, does all that. But, it was good. Like, it was a good pace to the scenes. You know what I mean?
Yes. And I really liked how they made, again, this killer, man, raincoat, a hook. He's not very intimidating, imposing. He doesn't have that iconic, ghost face or Freddy glove. The hook's kind of iconic, but he's lacking that thing in his costume like a lot of these other horror icons have. What I really liked they did in this movie was when the character gets on screen for the first time, the with the full outfit, the hook and everything, the music, the score that plays, the way they film it, it makes him feel imposing and scary when he finally gets on screen.
Well, and they did this thing where his boots were like very loud, so you could almost hear. Well, you could hear like the boots, and that was almost kind of like you knew that he was close, and they just did some different things in this one that I really liked. I thought that they they kind of knocked that out of the park, in my opinion.
Yeah, because there's only so much you're going to be able to do without going into camp if you try to do too crazy of a kill. And honestly, with a movie like this, if the kill gets too wild, then it does kind of get an eye roll, because like you're like, okay, is this a serious slasher type of movie, or is this more like a fun one? And so I felt like they had a couple of kills that were way more inventive than the other two. I Know What You Did Last Summer's, where they were kind of gruesome. And I thought those fit really well, you know, because it wasn't too over the top, but it was something better than just, you know, a knife in the chest or a hook in the back or something. It was a little bit more of that. The thing that I did, if you remember the original, there was that great sequence with Sarah Michelle Gellar. This movie was lacking that. I will say they did a really good job with the killer and everything, but that sequence is the highlight of that movie. It's about like it's honestly like a 20-minute sequence. And it's just really well directed, and just that was like the most tense part of that original movie. And I felt like this movie didn't have they have one scene that's pretty tense that you could compare it to. It happens kind of early on in the film. But other than that, I was hoping they'd have a nice little set piece like that without copying it, like was super, super tense, like the original had with Sarah Michelle Gellar's character.
Yeah, I would say that I was thinking that one scene that you're talking about. I think that's a good point, that they don't have anything on that level, but there are more kills in this, if I remember correctly. I mean, there are more like opportunity. In fact, there was a couple characters in there that I was like, oh, this guy's going to die, but they didn't, so it's one of those things where it
gets going quicker.
Yeah. And when it gets going, it keeps going. It's not this thing of, because I mean, the original, and again, I haven't seen the original in a while, but if I remember correctly, most of everything happens within like the last 30 minutes of the movie, if I remember correctly.
No, it gets to about the midpoint before you got the scene with Ryan Phillippe in the showers. You have the Sarah Michelle Gellar scene. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that if you really go rewatch the 97 original, like about 45 minutes go by before you really start seeing like the killer, like the trench coat and the hook and stuff. So the pacing on this one, and again, it's probably a sign of the times. It's just, everything's got to be a little bit quicker paced for our attention spans now. But the pacing I thought was really good. Like there was not one part, I don't know how you felt about this, but I didn't feel like it dragged at all.
No, not at all.
And that's a big compliment for a movie like this, because I think if the characters wouldn't have been written so well and performed so well, we would have been like, gosh, dude, just get to like another thing. Yeah. But you were really invested. They did a really good job, and Madeline Klein and Chase, I'm going to mispronounce her name, so I'll just say Chase Suey Wonders. You had told me she's the girl off of the studio, and I didn't even realize that because we knew we had seen her. But dude, I'm telling you, they really casted the hell out of those two lead roles, and the whole cast is great. But those two really stood out with like those characters had a lot of layers to them. And I think that helped those kind of down scenes, we're kind of just taking a break and you're kind of, getting invested. So
let's switch to our cons, just kind of a general breakdown.
Yeah, you got to have some, it's not a perfect movie.
It's not. It's got a few things that I didn't care for. First off, I'll stop. It had a couple of the horror trope type thing of, a couple people have already died. Hey, let's I'm gonna go check on this thing over here. Stay here.
Yeah.
And again, I know that those things have to happen for the movie to kind of,
but for the most part, there was a couple of parts I really liked. And this doesn't really give anything away, but there was comments about like, hey, nobody sleeps alone tonight.
Yeah.
Nobody goes alone tonight. Even there's a scene where they're at a graveyard and a character goes to check on something, and there's two other characters visiting a gravesite, and Madeline Klein's character sitting there. And it even makes sense that would happen because she's like, oh, I got two people right here.
Yeah, but see, to me, that kind of, because I was like, why wouldn't she just go with you? To me, that didn't make much sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying I've seen it way worse in other movies.
For sure. And again, these are just little, those are little nitpicky things that happen once or twice in this movie, but it wasn't so absurd where they were just doing ridiculous, making ridiculous decisions that didn't make any sense.
What was the thing that that bothered you the most, you would say? I know you got a couple things you want to hit on, but what was like the number one thing for you that like you were
the number one thing for me that
non-spoiler.
I don't know if I can.
All right, we'll save it for the spoilers.
Yeah,
so if you're watching this,
I gotta get into spoilers.
Okay.
Another thing I didn't really like is the reveals of the I thought they kind of messed up the reveals of the killer. I kind of felt like the weakest part of the movie, honestly, is probably the last like third.
I agree
Maybe.
with that 100%.
I thought
100%.
up until the last third, and again, overall, I really liked this movie. I really enjoyed it, but the last third is the weakest part of it, and
which is flipped.
Yeah,
with a lot of movies, like normally, like you're like, oh, the last 30 minutes are awesome, but like, you know, we just drag to get there. So that I agree with you. Like, I think the last act is the weakest.
Yeah, I think they fumbled that a little bit, not enough to like ruin the movie, but to me, I feel like if they would have shored that up, then I mean, that would have taken this movie from being, what I ended up thinking to just a great horror movie.
Yeah.
And then the forced relationship between Maya's character and Milo's character, it didn't make any sense from the. Was it?
Yeah,
Eva?
That's what we talked about earlier. The on and off again relationship.
Yeah, I think it's Maya. I meant Eva.
Yeah.
Or Ava.
It's Ava. Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I have the cast list pulled up because again, there's a lot of characters.
Yeah,
and they're different names.
So Ava and Milo's like relationship, they hint towards it at the very beginning, but then they never really like revisit that enough to where you care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'll get into it a little bit with our when we get like full on spoilers, but without going into spoiler territory, I have pretty much the same gripes. I would say for me, I thought scenes could have lingered a bit longer. I think that I know that we're wanting to get quick cuts, quick scenes, and I like that because the movie doesn't bog down. As great as I said of the original scene is with Sarah Michelle Gellar, other than that, some other scenes go on way too long in that original 97 movie. So I don't want it to go there, but I wanted to stay with certain scenes a little bit longer. You know, I wanted to stay with certain to make it a little bit more tense. Aside from one set piece, like there's not a whole lot of tense kills in this. It's pretty like, it's kind of like, quick, you know what I'm saying? So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of like a, that anticipation build. Is he around this corner? Is he behind here? Is he whatever? But again, that's just a small minor gripe. But yeah, and I know this isn't a negative, but I really liked the music too. They used like a lot of like popular music in this, which I think kind of adds to it. It almost got too much. So it almost became a gripe for me because it kind of takes you out when it like cuts to a thing and it's playing music, it's kind of cliche, but I thought I really liked it because it really fit what I think they were going for with this movie, kind of the audience they were going for with this movie. Because this is for like, like I grew up with, I Know What You Did Last Summer. This is for a new generation, So I really liked how it kind of had that stuff for them. It had the legacy stuff for us, but we ended up enjoying the newer cast and all that stuff even more. So my other gripe would be the legacy characters in general. I'll get into it when we do the full spoiler, but that was probably handled for the most part, like I said at the beginning, really well. Like I thought it was handled really well, but there's a few things like I can't really put my finger on it, but without getting into spoilers. But I just wish they would handle that part a little bit better. If you're going to introduce the characters, have them come back, do all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, of all the characters in the movie, I do feel like the legacy characters were probably the weakest, other than Milo's character. I do kind of agree with that. And again, it's one of those things that we talked about on the drive home. Is it's tough to start rebuilding a new era for a franchise, and you have to kind of keep these other people that were in the originals. You kind of have to bring them in. It was just, I thought they handled it probably close to about as well as you can. But yeah, that's probably one of the small.
And some of the dialogue is pretty cringe, but I got to give it to the actors because some of this dialogue is not good.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the characters delivered it with like such oomph and such like, they were like bought into the words that like I kind of glossed over some of that. But I'm not looking for like a great screenplay movies like this. I just meant there was a few like eye roll moments, like okay, but I think it was played for fun anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The characters were having a good time. The characters were having. But they were having. But they were having a good time. I mean, we say that, but it's funny because there's a scene that happens early in the movie where this character's like really sad about something, and somebody makes like an offhand comment of like, "Well, you're hot though,"
Yeah.
And it's like, are you? I mean, that just happened. That just, I know that you're trying to show that they're like best friends, but that just happened. That's like, that's super. I mean, come on, man. Just a couple of days. Just a couple of days. But yeah, overall, man, I really enjoyed the movie. This was better than I thought it would be. Again, I was excited for it because of the original. I'm going to be honest. It's like anytime they come out with a new Scream movie, I'm going to be excited. This, I felt like there's no way they can have another story. You know, they tried to reboot it with the Amazon series. That just failed miserably. And it's like, dude, do they really have another story to tell? Like, is there really any reason for them to do a reboot, or as, Scream calls it, a requel or whatever? And man, I'll be honest with you, when I left this movie, I was like, dude, I could spend a little bit more time with these characters. I enjoyed it enough for that. It wasn't perfect, but man, if you're a fan of 90s slasher movies, and the reason I keep saying 90s slasher movies is because of the pacing and stuff.
And it's a very different tone than the horror movies now.
If you're going for like to really see a scary movie or to see like great kills, and you want to be like, and that's your entertainment you take from it, probably going to be a little disappointed. But overall, if you go into it and you want to see kind of that old school slasher film type of vibe, you want to see like some good characters, you want to see a worthy reboot, requel, whatever you want to call it, I think fans of the original, for the most part, are going to be really happy with it. I mean, at least I was, and I've seen the original a bunch of times. So that was the biggest shock for me, is just how much I ended up enjoying it, because I was just kind of going in thinking, man, they don't have to really make a great movie. As long as it's entertaining, I'll be happy. And it was a lot better than I was even expecting. So that's a great sign for a movie like this, because I could see this movie again. I would watch it again.